Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am I. My name is Joshua Ansley, and I'm here with our guest Ganesh. So today we are talking about the Ajna chakra, spelt A-J-N-A, pronounced Ajna. You hear different ones. I don't know, I was a little surprised Deepak Chopra says Ajna. I don't know if he's just because he's talking to a Western, I don't know, but Ajna is the way I understand it to be pronounced. This is where we start to get into the ooh kind of shit, right? So we have earlier in Vishuddha, is where we're starting to get much subtler. We're getting into communication. We're getting into, in Vishuddha, we start to talk about mental images then being translated into understanding them, to be able to listen. So we're talking about language as a mental image, right? We're getting into subtler aspects. We're getting into symbology, representation of things, right? And that is a huge aspect in this chakra here, in Ajna, okay? So it is identified with the power of sight, right? So we talk about, obviously we know like these five senses, and then we talk about the sixth sense. And, so we can get all mystical on it, and it is some mystical ass shit if you're a mystic and you take it mystically, right? But I want to talk about it a little bit practically for a moment, where it's this ability here is to discern. So it's being able to discern between different things, right? In this world of duality. But it's as this world of duality, as we move towards singularity. So it's really, there's the different nadis going through the spine, right? Or through the body, but particularly the three major nadis, the Ida Pingala and the Sushumna, right? And these are the Kundalini energies like running up the spine. And as the two that wind around each other, that serpent around the spine, right? If you look at the caduceus in the medicinal world, right? It's the serpents rolling around the center. And they come and they cross over here as they come up into singularity. I mean, they cross over several points through the body around the chakras, and their energy helps spin through the chakras, and then comes up to here as we open up into the singularity up above, which we'll get to, right? So this is the ability to discern between the duality, right? And it's actually not just to be discerning intellectually between the duality, it's actually to discern the difference between singularity and duality, to be able to discern the earthly from the transcendental, right? So what happens is this is also recognized in pattern recognition. So when we talk about these gifts and these supernatural gifts and everything that comes from meditating upon this space, if you talk to some mystical ass people that are sitting around with their eyes focused in, pointing at the brow all day long, if you talk about it very practically in terms of pattern recognition, that's how we actually talk about being able to see the future. So look at your life, right? And you learn through wisdom and understanding and through experience. Experience down through these lower chakras then brings you up into an understanding. Here, when you have this experience, you start to see patterns developing, and you start to go, wait a minute, I can actually feasibly predict a future instance of what's going to happen here because I recognize this pattern. I recognize whatever that sequence of life is, 0, 1, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, whatever it is, this pattern that happens, you can actually start to predict the future, not by having some sort of mystical vision of the future. That is a whole other aspect. If you want to get into that, that's fine. I'm all about being that mystical shit. But I just want to talk about it on a very simple, practical level to start, where you can literally, by seeing patterns and understanding intellectually and discerning with wisdom, you can actually start to actually have a vision of the future of what you're going to see. And that's like a lot of psychic ability is a lot of people that they're not frauds. A lot of psychics are complete frauds, but I'm saying the psychic ability is actually just being able to discern patterns and being able to see, understanding human nature, and to say, okay, yeah, I can see that based on the things that you've said, I can already see something that's going to connect with you in a pattern of your behavior, and I can tell you something that will seem like I have psychic abilities, because it is my ability to discern and perceive further into the future, right? So that's just on a practical level, right? So, as we get deeper into this space, this is a really interesting thing. I love to interpret the Bible in all kinds of fucked up ways, But so really we think about it as this center of the brow here, right? Right about here, right? Right there. But actually, it's really more towards the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, which is it's really kind of in the center of the brain. So if you drew a line between your ears, and then it drew a line from your eyebrows straight back, right? So basically right above your ears and then the eyebrows straight back, the center of your brain, that's really where we're looking at for this space. And what's really cool is, I think it's Genesis 32:30 or something like that. Jacob says, I have seen the face of God, and it is in Peniel, spelled Peniel, I think. But again, an esoteric interpretation of the Bible is a lot more fun than all that just don't do this shit. That's all for kids and for people without developing up into this intellectual ability to discern and to discern what's really happening within these scriptural texts and to listen appropriately. And so another really interesting thing is somewhere else in Genesis 2, it talks about, I'm sure you've heard, like the land of milk and honey. So the land of milk and honey is really what happens is it's the secretions from the pineal and the pituitary gland. And when that happens, one of them I think is DMT, which we know is as a drug, but it's in ayahuasca and things like that, but also produced naturally by the brain. And then the other one is, I think, melatonin maybe, and they have one is milky white and one is consistency and color of honey. Right? So this is the land of milk and honey. This is what we're talking about. It's basically our imagination. It's our vision. It's our ability to visualize something, to create and manifest something in our lives. There's two ways, well, there's a lot of ways, but there's the currents that are running through the body up and down is to work through the chakras in a form of liberation, and one is a form of manifestation. Right? So the liberation is lifting, it's up. It's lifting up from the base of the spine, coming up. And then the manifestation is from the up coming down. As creative types, as artists and things like that, you bring the inspiration from up here and all the way down into manifesting. Right? So this sort of understanding is to visualize, to create something in our lives. This is the ability to actually have the imagination to visualize it. And the more we can visualize it, there's really a really strong practice. It's like the law of attraction, the power of awareness, is when we operate in a sense of faith of creating something in our lives, is by visualizing it and actually allowing ourselves to experience the feeling and the sensations in the body and in our entire being of what it would feel like. Man, it's a little shaky, sorry. Let me extend out a little bit. Being able to visualize and be able to actually feel what it would feel like in the body if we already have that thing in our lives. And that thing, let's say, really by about being who we want to be, right? So it's working from inside out or down, or from up to down, right? But understanding that we already are that which we are trying to receive or that we're trying to get. We already have that which we are trying to get, right? So when we actually visualize that, because what happens is the conscious mind, its job is to make whatever your subconscious mind is telling you. I feel like this is a little shaky. Let me try to get a little more stable here. I don't know if that's going to work better, but... So the conscious mind's job is to make whatever the subconscious mind is telling you a reality, right? So if you believe something is not possible, if you believe something is not true and something is not possible, then your conscious mind will not be looking for ways to make it possible. If you have an inherent belief subconsciously that something is possible, and if you don't know what your belief systems are, it's because they're running subconsciously. It's these tapes rolling over and over again, this concept of self that you have, right? And this concept of the world that you have. It's all about how we relate to the world, right? And then the world responds to us. I mean, sounds like some mystical shit, maybe, I don't know, but it's very practical. So when we start to visualize in our mind's eye how to create these things, right? And we actually feel it in our bodies. So when we start to feel it in our bodies and feel what it's actually like, then we believe that which we are then we draw that into our lives. People will treat us differently. The world will actually absolutely react to us differently, right? And this is the power of our imagination. Our imagination creates our entire lives. It is such a beautiful, incredible part of manifesting. And really, because we are all on these subconscious tapes that just keep rolling, we just keep manifesting the shit in our lives and then wondering, why is this happening to me? I'm talking about everything from physical ailments. It's like a huge, if you look at it, it's not even, again, that mystical. Like, yes, you make yourself sick. You are conditioned to make yourself sick. It is a place of comfort. It is a place of attention. It is a place of ease. When you get this attention when you're younger, we're conditioned to allow ourselves to be sick. And there's different ways of being conditioned, right? But when you look at it very practically, about 90% of diseases, and I don't know, making up numbers, of course, but it's attributed to stress. And stress is all about how we're relating to the world. It has nothing to do with the world. It is our relationship to the world, right? So this power here is an incredible place to be able to visualize the world as we'd want it to be. The world is imagining it as we already are, basically, right? It's working with this concept as we already are that which we want to be. That is some really in-depth, deeper shit, right? Because there's also an acceptance of reality. We're not talking about delusion. Delusion here is when we're closed off through this space and we're not able to see clearly anything in our lives, right? That we don't have that proper vision in our lives. So when we open up and we actually are able to see reality as it is, because it's not about, I talk about this is all an illusion. None of this means a goddamn thing, and it is. But it's not. It's actually very real. This is a very real, tangible, practical world that we live in. We cannot deny that. There's far too many spiritual people, I believe, in my opinion, that are, lost in the upper chakras and not grounded down through the lower and understanding how to live in this reality, and just ignoring the reality of this world. But it's how to be engaged with this world, but not attached to it and not dependent upon it for our own happiness, right? And that comes from an understanding of accepting the world as it is, seeing it clearly, and then being able to create the world as we want it to be. So, there's a lot to talk about in this chakra, so I'm not sure if I got it all. So, again, this is about moving towards that singularity from this place of duality, right? And as we're moving up into higher levels here, I definitely say that this is, some people, there's caveats that say this is a dangerous place to be when you get up into these higher areas. If you're not grounded and open and balanced, rather, through the lower chakras, right? In these spaces, if we don't have a solid sense of self, if we don't have a solid understanding of who we are in the world, how we're relating to others, how we're relating to ourselves, if we don't have a solid sense of trust and love and gratitude in our hearts, we open up through these other places. There's a lot of artists, right? A lot of the suffering, tortured artist type are people that are very open up through the higher chakras and have a really big connection to something deeper and transcendent, but they don't have an understanding grounding down into this world. And to be in my opinion, a full, complete manifestation of the power and potential of humanity, it's having all engines firing at once. So if you're opening up through these higher chakras without having this work done down here, it is, and I'm telling you from experience, it is horrifying. It's terrifying. It's not, opening up to God. It's the terror and the dread that comes, because it's all how we're relating to the world. It's all how we're relating to God. And if we're not okay down through these lower chakras and through these lower concepts, if we don't understand a sense of devotion, if we don't understand a sense of love and compassion, if we don't have these things developed, which take time and work to develop, then when we open up into this higher consciousness, this God consciousness up in these, which is really up into the Sahasrara, the top chakra, but this is where it comes together and our vision comes into a singularity. While this is singularity, as we get into the next one, that is one without a second, right? When thine eye is single, then shall thy body be full of light, Matthew 6:22. It's all in that fucking Bible, man. That book is so full of esoteric shit. It's fucking fantastic. And so we're coming towards singularity here, but in order to have singularity, the very concept of singularity still denotes some idea of something else, right? That's why the next chakra is referred to as the one without a second. So it's not just singularity, it is one without a second at all. But anyway, so while it can be a lot of fun, this is like playing with Ouija boards and shit, you know what I mean? And be like, oh my God, no, did you touch that? Oh my God. And then everybody fucking dies, right? This can be really terrifying. It's playing with our own understanding of reality because this is our imagination and our lives are, it's entirely our imagination. We create it all entirely. I know that doesn't make sense because you're stuck in this practical, real world, which is part of it. But it's as we move forward into the future, right? It's being able to visualize what we want ourselves to be by recognizing what we already are. Doesn't make any fucking sense. It's called faith, right? It's operating in a sense of absolute faith that we already have that which we want to be, that we are already embodying that which we want to be. And then that allows us to then move forward into this world and be drawn to it, to draw things into our lives and to create it and manifest it practically in this world. So that's just the caveat that I would say about, dabbling into the, the dark arts. The negative archetype would be the black magician. The positive archetype would be the yogi. And the yogi, there's all different kinds of yogas, obviously. But the yogi is somebody who understands that we are not gaining our satisfaction just from the physical world. This is from a tantric yoga tradition, this school that I'm speaking about with the chakras, right? And it's about engaging with the world and understanding with the world that God is present everywhere in this world. I'll get into that next week a little bit, so I don't want to say too much of that. But it's an understanding of how to engage with the world and find God and use the world, right? But not dependent upon the world for our understanding of that. Right? So it's using what we have to proceed. So even the knowledge that we have, the Vedantic philosophy, is of this world, right? But it wakes us up into something higher. And then we release and let go of those lower desires. I don't know what I'm talking about. In Lakesh Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?